So today I'm going to tell you why you actually don't want a dismissive avoidant to commit to you. I know it's shocking if you're someone who thinks you do, but you really don't. And this realization, the clarity of this realization is going to make it so much easier to get over them. So stick with me, because if you really let this hit home, it's going to make a huge difference. If you're new here, I'm Ketra Thompson, and what I do with my clients is I help them reframe the subconscious programming through custom hypnotherapy coupled with strategic relationship, attachment style, and mind coaching to finally get you to the life and love that you really want. So, if you'd like to learn more about what I do, you can check out the link for that in the description below, where you can set up a completely complimentary consultation call so that you and I can chat and we can get to the heart of what's going on and I can make my best recommendation. Also, I really appreciate it if you click like and subscribe so you can be notified every time I post a new video. So if you've been with a dismissive avoidant, you know that especially if they're an ethical dismissive avoidant, that they're probably a really good person, and just think if they would just commit, everything would be fine, everything would be great, and all of your worries would be gone. But it's not actually true. What the dismissive avoidance does in someone is it causes them to fault find. It creates distance-making behaviors on a subconscious level. And so in a relationship, there are only two options. You are creating closeness or you're creating distance. And what happens in the mind of the dismissive avoidant is that they pick you apart so that they have a good reason to behave the way they do. And so this fault finding is, instead of looking at you like, oh, you're human, you're not going to be perfect all the time. I'm not going to be perfect all the time. That's okay. We can communicate about the things that are important to us that we want the other person to work on or something, right? They don't see it like that. They think they need to show up perfect all the time. And they also fault find in you so that they can have this mental laundry list of things to pick apart. And they fault find so that it can help them create distance. And so when they get flooded with all those emotions, because they don't take their emotions one at a time, they're detached from them most of the time. So when they do feel them, or they're being questioned about something, or they feel like confrontation is about to happen, or they have to get defensive about something, all of those emotions that are usually held back get flooded in at one time. And so fault finding is a way of deflecting from the conversation about them, or reaching resolution, or joining in a level of communication and curiosity, even about the other person's feelings. All they feel are alarm bells going off inside of them that someone's seeing something in them that might not be perfect, and they have to deflect and project and create distance. And a really great way for them to do that is to pick you apart, to find something wrong with you. And they've kind of got a stockpile of this in their head. They fault find all the time, which gives them an excuse why they shouldn't go further in a relationship with you. And so it helps them justify mean or even protective behaviors, because after all, you've got all these problems that they can point out. And so they don't express their needs. And because of that, they don't communicate well. They don't say, I need a little space. Hey, I'm feeling a lot right now. Will you give me, an hour? They don't say that. They don't have enough self-awareness to do that. They just feel flooded. And when a flood's coming, you're just running for high ground. You just take off running. And if the only way you can get away is by saying something mean to someone else so that they give you the distance, you just do it. And then you flee. And so the confusion comes when you know this person is a good person, when they are an ethical DA. You see their kind acts of service. You see their thoughtfulness. You see that they are the kind of person you can rely on and trust in a difficult situation. But what you don't see is their inner narrative. Now, one of the misconceptions about dismissive avoidant people is that they don't ever commit and they don't ever get married. They do. Sometimes because they don't have any other choice. Sometimes because someone got pregnant. Sometimes because it would make them look bad to the world if they didn't. I mean, there's all these reasons. They do commit. But you have to remember that this fault finding, it doesn't go away once they commit. It doesn't go away in a marriage. It is there. And the fact that it's there is that is a reality you need to grab onto and realize that in your head, you're seeing the kind, thoughtful gestures, the calm, cool nature of who they are. But inside, that's not what's going on for them. When emotions do come in, they're flooded and they go into this protective function and they fault find and they don't communicate their needs. So they're constantly building resentment in their mind. This thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, thinking, well, I do this and I did that and you don't appreciate me. But they're thinking it all. They're not saying it. And they've got a stockpile of things that they are resentful about on the inside because they don't actually communicate their needs. And that creates a nightmare in a marriage. And so knowing that you don't see the inner narrative and realizing that might help you, I hope, at least get some clarity. You need to get honest about how they actually make you feel and quit looking at the good things that they do. Quit looking at the generous behaviors that they have. You need to get honest about how you feel with them, not just when you're spending time with them, when your focus is external and you have all the feel-good feelings and you might be spending the night and you're just happy they're with you. That's not when you want to look at it. You need to look at all the time between those moments. How many hours have you spent in a week wondering if this person felt the same about you? How many times did you feel disappointed when they ignored a message for hours or days? How much time have you spent feeling unwanted, doubting yourself, wondering what is going on? This creates a lot of cognitive dissonance where you see them behave kindly when you're with them, but then you don't actually feel wanted or loved when you're not with them. And even when you are with them, they're not really going deep. If you're honest with yourself, they might be talking a lot or sharing about themselves, but they're not actually curious about you. They're not curious about your inner world, and they're not connecting with you on a deep level, which might even feel safe for you at first because they aren't pushing you to a place of true vulnerability either, which is maybe part of the avoidant part of you. But I want you to realize that the dismissive avoidant loves the gray area. You want clarity. You want to know where you stand. You want to know that you're loved. You want to know that you're safe in a relationship. You want to know that you can count on someone, not just to help you with a flat tire, but to be there for you when you need someone to wrap their arms around you and just hold space and not make you feel stupid for needing that. And so you've got to get honest with yourself and you've got to realize that the dismissive avoidant loves the gray area for a reason. The gray area gives them space to create a lot of exit strategies. So they love the friends with benefits kind of relationship, even if they're not seeing anyone else. They don't really want to talk about where it's headed. They don't want to talk about the relationship. They don't want to talk about commitment or the future. They just want to see how it goes. And that is sort of the friends with benefits, even if it's exclusive. Don't let exclusivity fool you. You need to ask yourself what it is you want for your life. Because if you commit to this person, that this person becomes your spouse, now you become their main target. A lot of dismissive avoidants are hard to understand when you're dating them. But when you're married to them, it's a whole other thing. They don't go all in. They might, with their commitment, be committed to not leaving that marriage and sticking with it like a soldier at war is going to fight their way through battle, but they're not committed to self-reflection and growth. So they continue to fault find and they continue to not communicate needs and they continue to grow in their resentment. And that is just going to have you continually picked apart by the one person who is supposed to love you. Let that sink in. So the reality is that even if they commit, there is going to be so much cognitive dissonance that continues between their acts of service and how anxious you feel about them. And this is why some people can start feeling more anxious even if they aren't typically an anxiously attached person, because the ongoing behavior of them guessing where you stand, guessing how they feel, they aren't having that depth, they pick you apart, they fault find with you. Eventually, as a married partner, you might get jealous. You might wonder if there's someone else, because once upon a time they act loving, they acted like you were great, and now you just feel like you're being picked apart all the time. And if they're not picking you apart, they're kind of quiet and silent and not really communicating well. So you don't really know where you stand, even if you're married to them. And so this creates just an unsustainable level of rejection. It's emotional rejection. And the securely attached person will not stay with a dismissive avoidant. They won't stay with anyone who's unwilling to grow. So if someone did stay with a dismissive avoidant that was secure, if the person was secure and they chose to stay with a dismissive avoidant, it would only be because that person was really committed to their own personal growth. They were committed to being self-reflective. They were able to accept influence, which means they're able to listen to their partner's perspective and feelings without jumping to conclusions and creating judgments, but being curious and open and taking their time to process. So if the dismissive avoidant isn't doing that, there's no way that any secure person would want to stay with them. Even if they somehow ended up with them, marrying them and not picking up on it, it would come to light that this situation was not going to change. And so the problem is the dismissive avoidant has deep shame wounds, and they have this conflict avoidance pattern that keeps them stuck. Because conflict was not safe. Sharing their feelings, their needs was not safe. They were dismissed, they were ignored, or they were criticized once upon a time for doing this. And so their little way of acting like they just go with the flow in life. They just go with the flow. They don't mind things. They're just like, low key and chill. That is the biggest lie ever. That is their facade. That is their mask. They are not go with the flow people, but they are self-betrayal people. And so they are constantly not speaking up and not communicating effectively until it builds up and they say things in a big, bold, negative way that's confrontational to push someone back enough so that they create distance. That's not real communication. That angry communication is not healthy communication. Real communication requires self-reflection. It requires someone to go, what am I feeling? What do I need? Maybe I need some time. Maybe I need an hour. Maybe I need 2 hours. And they regulate themselves to the point where they can come back to the partner and be curious. Help me understand where you're coming from with this. Help me understand, how that's making you feel. Help me understand what you need from me in this. Like they're curious, they're open, and they're wanting to resolve conflict. That's not what a dismissive avoidant does. They're not go with the flow, and they're also not self-reflective. They are self-protective, and they're fault-finding. And it doesn't make them evil, but it does create a dynamic that you've got to get honest with yourself. And you've got to really ask yourself, how much time do you actually want to spend trying to connect with someone who is not willing to be self-reflective and who is not willing to resolve conflict in a healthy way or to even learn about how to? This is important. If you realize they're going to always fault find, why would you sign up to spend decades with them in marriage? Do you want to be treated like that forever? Do you want someone who picks you apart and criticizes the little things that you might do when you're anxious? Do you want someone who's going to create a bank mentally of all your flaws so they can throw them at you every time they want you to get away from them? I don't. So get real with yourself and get out of the fantasy that they're going to suddenly be different if they decide to commit to you. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the hypnotherapy process because all of this stuff in our attachment style is formed when we're really, really young. And it's formed when we are programming our subconscious mind. And so the subconscious process of reframing these triggers, these emotional wounds, these protective functions is so much more powerful than any kind of other process because our subconscious mind is running over 95% of everything we think, feel, and do. So if these are patterns in your life, if you keep choosing these kinds of people, if you want to make a change but just keep showing up in the same way, it's probably because you've got some subconscious programming that you really need to reframe. So if that's the case, let's chat on a consultation call and see if that custom one-on-one work is a fit for you, because it's so profound once you finally address it at that root level. So what can you do? What are some things you can do to get over this dismissive avoidant, to let it go and to stop looking at the good and stop ignoring the dysfunction? The first thing you can do is just get really real with how you felt with them and in between the times. How much time did you spend guessing about what they felt? How much time did you spend feeling rejected? How many hours did you spend wondering if they actually care or not? How many times did you feel breadcrumbed and then you'd get the phone call or the text and go, oh, they do care, and get sucked back in? How much time did you spend on that roller coaster? And how much time do you want to continue spending? Probably you don't want to spend time on a roller coaster with a fault-finding person. And this is not to demonize them. But anyone who is not willing to accept influence and be self-reflective and learn how to repair and learn about their own protective functions and how they show up is not going to make a good partner. And I don't care what attachment style they are. So you have to be self-reflective. Would they actually be a healthy partner? Not if they're not growing, willing to grow, willing to be self-reflective, willing to accept influence, willing to see the reality of how their behavior makes you feel, then they aren't a good partner. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to sign up for a lifetime of someone who's going to fault find just to push me away enough, just to piss me off enough that I'm going to leave them alone. Because what happens is we stop bidding for connection at that point. And John Gottman did a lot of really good research about how bids for connection matter. Everything you say and do, even your body language, can be a bid for connection with your partner. And if they aren't coming toward you to meet you when you go toward them, then you're going to constantly feel starved. And then if they do come at you with their fault-finding tactics, now you're going to feel judged and like you can't be yourself. So you're going to shut down emotionally. You're going to stop bidding for connection and you're going to lose yourself. And I doubt that's what you want in any relationship. So remind yourself of the reality that this fault-finding process will be the emotional death of you, even if you committed in that relationship, if that person isn't willing to be honest with themselves and to do the work. So again, if you'd like some help to rewire and reframe all of your own subconscious programming so that you don't do this anymore, set up that consultation call so that we can chat. And as always, if this content resonates with you, I really appreciate it if you can click like and subscribe so that you can be notified every time I post a new video. And until next time, I hope you curate a life by your own design.